All right, we're live. This is Attorney Broderick Brown. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of California. I've been an attorney now 16 years approximately. And so I just want to give my thoughts and opinion on the Trevor Bauer restraining order hearing on day 2. And so when we start, and I'm going to go as briefly as I can because I have a limited amount of time that I can talk today. But what I neglected to do yesterday was to discuss the standard. So I'm going to do that today. Let me share my screen. Share screen. And so let's share. Let's share this first. All right, so this is what the alleged victim needs to prove to prevail and to get a permanent restraining order granted. She needs to essentially prove that someone abused or threatened to abuse her. That's the first element. And the second element is that there was an intimate partner. Here, element number 2 is not disputed. No one disputes that they had sex. The question is whether or not there was any abuse involved with the sex, or was all of the physical activity consensual. And so in today's, let me stop sharing my screen. In today's hearing, a lot went on, and a lot went on. What went on today is the reason why a lot of sexual assault victims don't come forward. Again, I just showed you what needs to be proved and in the case, and I disagree with the judge. The judge allowed Mr. Bauer's attorney to ask questions about a bunch of unrelated matters. So let's get into what he asked questions about. Let me share my screen again. So the Sun, I think it's a UK-based website, has great breakdowns if you want to follow the coverage live. They're not tweeting, but they're blogging, I guess, the coverage. So Mr. Bauer's attorney started to ask questions about her past relationships. And in my legal opinion, I don't believe whether or not she had a relationship with Fernando Tatis is relevant to this proceeding. Arguably, I could see maybe why it would be relevant to a criminal proceeding, but even then it would be a stretch. But this is a complete stretch when you look at what they're required to prove. Now, the attorney starts off by saying that he's quote, "I want you to understand, I'm not asking these questions to slut shame you," but essentially that's what they're doing. Attempting to do, because she had a relationship with Fernando, their encounters were consensual. And so I just don't understand why this information was allowed to come in, or she had to testify to this, because it has no bearing on whether or not Mr. Bauer assaulted her on 2 occasions in 2021. It's just absolutely no bearing. And they brought up a couple other baseball players. And so it's just wild to me. And I just don't understand why it is relevant at all to these proceedings. Again, like I said yesterday, these celebrity proceedings aren't normal. In a normal case, the judge is not allowing you to get into this level of detail about someone's life, they usually take place in 2 to 3 hours. And so it's uncommon that you have this many witnesses testify, but I just don't see how this is relevant at all to Mr. Bauer's case, or how, if she had a relationship with Fernando Tatis or Mike Clevinger, how this changes the facts of this case. And essentially, he is trying to slut shame her, in my opinion. And I just thought it was a lot. So what happened today was they had the testimony in the morning. They took a break for lunch. And then after lunch, they took a witness out of order. Apparently, they told the nurse that she'd be able to testify this afternoon. And so the nurse got on the stand, and I guess they're going to continue with the alleged victim's testimony tomorrow morning. So what came out with the nurse's testimony, what was noteworthy was this. Let me scroll up to that. Was, remember, on their like quasi opening, Mr. Bauer's attorneys made a statement sort of alleging that some of her photographs were doctored, or there's filters put in there to enhance her injuries. But the nurse describes her appearance when she entered the hospital. And she said, quote, "When she walked in, I noticed physical facial injuries. I could see some bruising on her eyes, a bruised lip. That's when she first walked in, and that's all I noticed," end quote. So I want to stop sharing the screen because it actually has the alleged victim's name in it. I don't want to put that out there, even though not many people are going to see this video. But that's noteworthy because clearly there was physical harm. Someone in the comments, and I can't remember the name, asked me, or essentially stated that she didn't think it was normal to have bruised eyes and even in rough sex. And I can't really attest to any of that. And I can't speak to what did not or did occur during their two encounters. But what I can say is that clearly that there was some physical damage that the nurse was able to notice on first glance. And unless Mr. Bauer's attorneys are having an expert testify to explain to us lay people or squares, and the judge may be more aligned with me, or he or she may have more experience than I do, but I would need to have it explained to me why someone having scratches on her face or bruises to her eyes would be a form of a sexual act. So that was interesting. What was also noteworthy was that the nurse was doing the exam as part of a law enforcement procedure, so that she didn't make any diagnosis. I don't believe that Mr. Bauer's attorneys cross-examined her at the end of the day. I'd have to look at that, but today was interesting, and tomorrow's going to be more interesting because the cross-examination is going to continue of the victim. And again, the judge allowed a lot in today that has no bearing on what the alleged victim needs to prove to get her restraining order. I think that whether or not she slept with athletes in the past doesn't change the fact of what happened on those two occurrences, doesn't change her injuries. We'll know more about her injuries via the nurse's testimony tomorrow too. But I believe that the victim's testimony should probably be wrapped up by the end of tomorrow. It's crazy that this hearing is probably going to last a couple of more days, arguably through the middle of next week, depending on how long these other witnesses go. And again, we really have two justice systems because when I've sat in on restraining order hearings, I've seen sexual assaults alleged. I've seen physical beatings alleged. And most times, everyday people's hearings are being rushed through in 2, maybe 3 hours. And so the fact that the court is allowing this much time to be allocated in terms of judicial resources, and that looks like they're gonna get at least 5 full days of testimony is wildly unjust for all the other petitioners of permanent restraining order hearings that are required to prove their case in less than 2 hours. And today, when I was following the tweets, you can also follow Dan Lust at, let me get his Twitter handle. It's at Sports Law Lust. But I'm interested to see how this goes going forward. I said I was going to go 10 minutes. I actually went 12. I had another viewer in here today, so we're making not progress, we're maintaining. But if you have comments or on whether or not the judge should have allowed this information in this type of hearing for what was required to be proved, and the information specifically her sexual history with other Major League Baseball players, because it's not even like they were trying to get her sexual history with random Joe Blows. It was all baseball players. How like that was somehow relevant to this proceeding. If you agreed with the judge's decisions, please comment. If you disagreed, I'd like to hear your comments as well. Please like and subscribe. Thank you again. If you got this far into the content, thank you. Salute to you. And hopefully I'll give you guys an update tomorrow. Peace.